What's up guys, it's Topsy and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video we're going to be covering my custom SpeedDuel mini box, Escaping the Satellite. But before we do begin, I did want to go ahead and break down a few things regarding this video. The first thing being that the whole point of this series is to entertain the idea of what it would look like if Konami were to have made a set based on the Synchro era, and that being the first set as well. And I did this by taking inspiration in the way they've constructed their SpeedDuel boxes in the past. This includes skill design, deck construction philosophy, and incorporating the incremental power creep that they do with each set, while trying not to get overboard with it. But of course, if there's any choices that I make in today's decks that you end up disagreeing with, then feel free to replace them with whatever cards feel correct for you. And this is meant to be more of a skeleton for you guys to use as inspiration for your very own custom decks. But with that being said, if you guys do end up enjoying today's video and would like to support the channel, then I would really appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single upload. With that being said, let's begin. Alright then guys, so here we have the final character for my custom set, Escaping the Satellite with Tetsu Trudge. And this should be a pretty fun deck to discuss just because Trudge has a really interesting deck that changed a few times in the anime. He ends up getting his original I think guard deck, then he gets a high pursuit deck, and then after that he gets a dark signer worm deck. So Trudge has quite a bit going on in the anime. And this deck of charges is meant to be more of a mixture of the first two with some aspects of the last. So I hope you guys end up enjoying it. But before we do begin guys, I did want to go ahead and mention this real quick. If there's any deck and or skill that you want to go ahead and copy for yourself throughout this series, then all the skills and the deck list are going to be listed in the description below for each of the individual character videos. That way you can just copy and paste and go ahead and paste it onto your own dueling book or wherever it is you want to go ahead and recreate these cards. For some reason I've been having issues with my own dueling book, so this is a way to go ahead and bypass that so I can allow you guys to go ahead and use them as well. In addition, I'm also going to be uploading high resolution images of all the character skills. That way you can also copy them as well. Alright then, with all that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Trudge and his skills now. So, first skill up is You're Under Arrest, and this skill reads: once per turn during your main phase, while you control a face-up Goyo Synchro Monster, you can change the battle position of one attack position monster your opponent controls. This turn, you can't activate the effect of Goyo Synchro Monsters. Essentially what this skill is meant to do, it's meant to go ahead and mimic the original effect of Battle City Siren, a skill that was quite rampant in the format early on. But this way we tried watering it down where the skill wouldn't become too overpowered, while still allowing you to activate it as many times as you like because of the restrictions this skill does have. To prevent you from completely snowballing your opponent, you prevent yourself from going ahead and stealing that opponent's monster via the effect of your Goyo Synchro Monsters. And I think this is a really fair way of incorporating all those aspects into the skill, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. The second skill, however, is called Stop and Frisk, and this skill reads: once per turn you can activate one of the following effects. Return one monster you control that was special summoned from your opponent's graveyard to their hand, and increase your life points by its original attack. Or return two monsters you control that were special summoned from your opponent's graveyard to their hand and draw one card. I really like the way this skill ended up coming out just because it allows you to go ahead and utilize those monsters you took from your opponent via the effect of your Goyo Synchro Monsters. The way this skill is phrased, essentially anytime you take an opponent's monster and you have it on your field, you're able to go ahead and utilize those cards to either increase your life points and or use multiple of them in order to go ahead and draw through your deck. And I really like the way this skill ended up coming out. It overall feels like a really decent skill, and I think it's really uniquely designed as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Alright then, so now that we've broken down all of Trudge's skills, it's time to move on to his main deck, and I see no better place to start than with all the tuners. So the deck has a total of 3 tuners, those being Jutte Fighter, Torapart, and Stygian Security. For the most part, all the 3 of these tuners are pretty unimpressive for the most part. They do have their own versatility, so let's talk about them real quick. Jutte Fighter probably is the best one just for the fact that it does have the ability of changing one attack position monster your opponent has to defense mode, so this allows you to pretty much out any very large monster your opponent may have, so I do like that a lot. And Torapart is probably the second best tuner in this deck. The only thing about this card is that it does restrict you into only summoning warrior synchro monsters, but it does give them a pseudo protection effect where your opponent isn't able to activate activate any trap effects until the end of the damage step. So there is some level of versatility to these two tuners. The Stygian Security, this one might as well be a vanilla just for the very fact that we don't have any target in the deck specifically for it. And the main reason this one is in this deck is just because, well, there is one Synchro Monster in the strategy that kind of needs this guy as a material. So that's why we have it. And yeah, all these three tuners are cards that Trudge actually ended up using in the anime, so it felt fitting to add them in. Alright then, now that we're done with all the tuners, let's move on to the non-tuners. First one up being Samurai Sword Baron, a card that Trudge ended up using against his duel against Yusei. And for the most part, this card has a pretty interesting effect where it is able to change the battle position of a defense position monster your opponent has with attack mode, essentially forcing them to not play as defensively. So I like the versatility of this card. After that, we have Search Striker, and essentially what this card allows you to do, it pretty much allows you to out any defense position monster your opponent may have without ever proccing any effect from it. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we have 2 copies of Assault Dog, and essentially what this card does is once it's destroyed, you summon another one from the deck. So you have to play at least 2 copies of them. You could play 3, but I wanted to go ahead and make room for a lot more cards to have representation in this strategy. Next up, we have Guard Dog. I'm not a particularly big fan of this card just because I don't like floodgates. Essentially, this is a flip monster that on flip summon, your opponent is just not able to special summon anymore for the rest of this turn. And there is ways to abuse this that happened a lot in the TCG, but it's not going to be super likely in SpeedDuel, so it's okay, I guess. Next up, we have Pursuit Chaser, and we are really doubling down on anime representation. I like this card a lot just for the very fact that this really hones in on the whole strategy of the deck, where it is changing your opponent's stuff to defense mode and punishing them for having it in defense mode, because whenever a defense monster is destroyed, your opponent gets burnt for 500 damage while this card is face up on the field. This card doesn't have to destroy the monster, it just has to be face up in order to do this, so that's kind of cool. Next up, we have Gonogo, another card that I forgot Trudge had in his deck. And again, we are really honing in on the whole gimmick of the deck where it's changing stuff to defense mode, because after this card entered battle, if that monster is still on the field, it is changed to defense mode, so that's kind of cool. Next up, we have Stygian Security Patrol. Essentially, all this card does is that whenever it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it burns them times the level of the monster times 100. Also, it does have a really neat effect where if it's in the graveyard, you're able to banish it to go ahead and special summon a fiend with 2,000 or less attack from the hand, so that's a nice little way of extending. And the card that we chose to represent that is Phantom Skyblaster. I like this card quite a bit. Essentially, what this card does is that on normal or special summon, you're able to go ahead and special summon Skyblaster tokens up to the number of monsters you control. This is always going to end up being only one token you're going to be able to summon off this effect, just for the very fact that in speed duels, our zones are so limited that regardless of what your field is looking like, you're only ever going to get to summon one token max. But the whole point of the token on the field is to either extend your synchro plays or just burn your opponent for a little bit of chip damage. So I like this card a lot. It feels like something Trudge would potentially use in the anime, so I really like the addition. Last monster in this deck is Montage Dragon, the second pseudo boss monster of the deck. And I love this card. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it is such a fun card. In order to summon out this card, you must send 3 monsters from the hand to the graveyard. So it is a hefty cost to bring out this card. And the only benefit of this card for doing this is that this card just gets enormous by gaining attack equal to the combined level of those monsters times 300. This card does have the potential of becoming pretty beefy. I like this card a lot, and I would love to see players like trying to build around it, but it's not a particularly impressive card. Alright then, so now that we're done with all the monsters, let's move on to the spell and trap cards. First spell up is Pot of Dichotomy. One thing you'll notice about this deck is that the monster types are all over the place. We have Fiend, we have Warrior, we have a Beast, we have Machine, we have Rocks. And the cool thing about Pot of Dichotomy is that at the start of the main phase, you're able to target 3 monsters with different types, shuffle them all into the deck, and draw 2 cards. I love this little interaction just for the fact it synergizes really well with the Montage Dragon, and it's such a specific card that I feel like it can't really be abused in speed duels just because you have to play such a weird deck in order to make it work. But give me your thoughts. I like this card so much. Next up, we have Reinforcement of the Army in order to go and search out for your very important tuner monsters. MST, he ended up using this card specifically in his 3rd duel, I believe, so that's why we have it here as his dedicated form of background removal. And finally, Darkworld Shackle. I kind of wanted to go ahead and play into the whole cop motif as well, so we have an equip spell that is very, very punishing, reducing the attack of a monster to 100 when equipped with this card, and then burning your opponent for 500 damage each turn that card is on the field. It seems like a really fitting card for Trudge to use. Next up, we have the trap card lineup, which includes No Entry. Again, this card is so fitting for Trudge as a character. It changes all monsters to defense mode, and that's really fitting for the gimmick of the deck. Next up, we have Pinpoint Guard as a way to recover any monster in the graveyard that you need. We have Tune Capture, a card that is so Trudge coded. Just with the effect, you're able to take a monster from your opponent's graveyard to your field. I like that a lot, especially because it's a tuner monster. Granted, your deck is kind of weird about the tuners you are able to use, but I feel like it works out for the most part. After that, we have Stygian Dirge. Now, this card was one of the cards that I was a bit hesitant to add. Part of the reason it's here is because it's part of the Stygian archetype, but additionally, it is a very oppressive trap card that changes the levels of all monsters your opponent controls by 1, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when they're trying to synchro climb, this can be so detrimental. It doesn't stop them from synchro summoning, but it makes it really uncomfortable. So I like the way this card works. I can definitely see this card being a problem, but give me your thoughts on this one. Final trap card in this lineup is Wiretap. Again, another card that Trudge ended up using in the anime, and it is just very fitting for him as a character as well. Being able to negate the activation of a trap card and then shuffling it back into the deck. Really powerful effect. With 7 tools abandoned in the format, I feel like this card would be fine as well, but I'd love to hear all your thoughts on this as well. Alright, now that we're done with all the main deck, let's move on to the extra deck. And first card up is the elephant in the room, Goyo Guardian. Now, Goyo Guardian is an extremely powerful synchro monster that ran havoc in Edison format, but this is pre-errata because now it requires an earth tuner as opposed to back in the past where it just required a tuner. Essentially, this gives Trudge a very imposing boss monster that is a level 6 with 2800 attack points. That when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you're able to pretty much summon that monster in defense mode to your side of the field, continuously stealing resources from your opponent. The main thing that made this card so imposing is its massive attack stat at 2800. But I feel like the way the deck is constructed, it is still fairly challenging to summon out Goyo Guardian without being borderline impossible. So I like the inclusion of it in the deck. Next up, we have Goyo Predator, a level 6 generic synchro monster with 2400 attack points. Essentially, this card has a very similar effect to Goyo Guardian, where when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you're able to special summon that monster to your field. This time you can summon it in attack or defense mode, up to you. The one thing about that monster you summoned out, however, is that any damage it deals to your opponent is cut in half, so that feels like a pretty fair way of balancing this card out. Last Goyo card in the deck is Goyo Chaser, and again, we are still following suit with the effects of the Goyo cards. This card has the effect where it gains 300 attack for each earth synchro monster you control, and when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you summon it to your field, and that monster's attack gets cut in half. So all these cards are able to steal opponent's monsters, but they all have their own unique restriction to those monsters you take. And the last synchro the deck has access to is Stygian Sergeant that requires a Fiend Tuner as material, which makes sense why we have the, what was it called, Stygian Security as the tuner of the strategy. Essentially what this card does, whenever it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it's able to gain 800 attack points, bringing it up to 3000. And also it is able to do a second attack in a row. So this card is pretty damn scary in the way that it works, but it is pretty freaking difficult to summon out. So I feel like that little aspect of it makes it a bit more balanced. Really like the way these cards work with each other. Next to Jutte, he has the next most robust extra deck, and I really like the way the deck ended up coming out. But of course, I do have a lot of suggestions for you guys in case you want to make any replacements of your own. The first few replacements are the Display Rider and the Chaos Rider Gustav. These two cards in particular are just here as aesthetic cards for Trudge. We have, of course, the Gate Blocker, but I've already expressed that I'm not a huge fan of this card. We have Twin-Headed Wolf as another Fiend monster for the effect of Stygian Street Patrol. We have Battle Fader as a special summon target of the Stygian Security, or as just a really good battle deterrent, but I just didn't like this card because it summons itself onto the field and it could clog the field in order to make synchro plays really difficult. We have Regretful Rebirth, an actual card that Trudge used in the anime, but it didn't feel very fitting in this deck in particular. Honorable mentions are Stygian Street Patrol and Assault Dog, in case you wanted to go ahead and complete the 2 copies of it in his main deck and the 3 copies of Assault Dog, as he did in the anime. Alright guys, and that's pretty much Trudge's deck. In the comments below, give me every single thought you have about it. Did you like it? Do you think it's too gimmicky? Do you think I leaned too much into the anime? Not enough? I love to hear all your thoughts about that. Alright then guys, now before we do go, I do want to go ahead and mention 2 things. First, as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you want to go ahead and copy any of the skills and or effects of the skills or deck profiles, it's all going to be in the description below of every single character deck we've done so far. So feel free to do so. And additionally, all the high resolution pictures of the skills are going to be in my Twitter page, which will be linked in the description below if you want to go ahead and cop that for yourself as well. But also in the future, I would like to go ahead and host a little tournament based on this mini box that I've created. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comment section below, and then we can maybe arrange something. If not, don't worry about it. I'll still find a way of going ahead and doing this. I want to make a video for it in the future, so keep an eye out for that. Lastly, I want to go ahead and give a shout out to the channel members that help support the channel, that being Push Exit Start. Huge shout out to you, man. Really appreciate everything you do for the channel. All right, and if you guys would like to support the channel as well, you can do so by joining the membership. It is completely optional though, but it goes a long way to support me as a content creator. But if not, the best way of doing so is just by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. That goes a long way as well. But yeah, guys, with that being said, I really appreciate you guys staying till the end, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.